Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I hope you can see my slides now in full screen.
We do.
Okay, great. So I will be speaking today about the cycling revolution in Europe, about recent developments in infrastructure and behavior change. I work for Polis Network, which is the network of cities and regions working together towards transport sustainability and innovation. And currently the network is formed by 90 members, cities and regions, as well as associated members. And we work in areas such as peer-to-peer exchange, policy, and we participate in research and innovation projects. And within Polis, I coordinate the Active Travel and Health Working Group, which looks at the impact that urban and regional transport has on the environment and on health, with a focus on the role of soft modes of transport, such as walking and cycling. And the group focuses on measures and strategies to enable a more balanced distribution of public space across the different modes, promoting active travel, and this way harnessing its well-known benefits. It also fosters discussion among members on public bicycle sharing schemes, noise pollution from transport, and climate change. And also the group aims to advance knowledge on the prioritization and integration of health in urban and transport planning processes. So I won't go today in detail about the benefits that cycling can bring, but I'd like to mention that the objectives of the Green Deal for Europe to become a climate neutral economy by 2050 can only be obtained by increasing the sustainability of the transport sector. And for this to happen, a shift to active travel is needed. So promoting active travel has the potential not only of improving air quality, but also to improve physical and mental health, reduce noise, improve road safety, and reduce inequalities. So I have divided my presentation in two parts. The first one is related to hardware measures, so to vehicles, to the cycling infrastructure, to physical structures, and the second part to software, so the issues related to behaviors change, etc. One of the most important revelations of the pandemic has been to show how disproportionate the distribution of public space is in favor of motorized traffic. So with cars accounting for 30 to 40% of journeys and occupying 70 to 80% of public space in European cities, there is often not enough space left for people to walk and cycle around while complying with social distancing requirements. And this situation caused by car-centered design and planning of cities poses not only environmental and space efficiency problems, but also results in safety issues in urban areas. And cities play a key role in reversing this situation, as they have the competence to allocate public space in a more balanced way across the different modes. So during the pandemic, many people started to cycle as a means of transport, experiencing their cities as cyclists with more space, cleaner air, and less noise. And although mobility behaviors are difficult to change, the COVID pandemic has provided an opportunity for many people to shift to more active behaviors. So during the lockdown, cities all over the world have been reallocating space from cars to pedestrians and cyclists. Different space reallocation options have been used, such as emergency cycle lanes, but also slow streets or open streets. And many of these measures were implemented as temporary or emergency measures, which allowed for testing. This experience has demonstrated that local authorities can be agile in times of need, and that respacing streets to promote active travel does not always require large amounts of money or complex design or time-consuming administrative processes. According to the European Cyclists Federation COVID-19 tracker, which is a tool that has been tracking all these recent developments, since the beginning of the outbreak, there have been more than 2,500 kilometers of new cycle lanes announced throughout Europe, of which almost 1,500 have been implemented already. So 42 out of 89 European metropolitan cities announced or implemented COVID-19 cycling measures. And among them, the most popular ones are the cycle lanes, the so-called pop-up bike lanes. So this is also from the same source, the cities and how much kilometers they have on the first place announced, but then actually implemented, which is the chart below. So we can see the cities that have been leading in this process. So these are some of the examples of cities that have actually used this opportunity to advance their cycling agenda. And at Polis, we have been engaging with our cities throughout this process, also on the challenges faced when implementing this infrastructure and how it can become permanent, meeting also adequate safety conditions. So based on this experience during the pandemic, there have been different recommendations that we have been providing also for the short-term measures. For example, ensuring that access for people with disabilities or road safety must not be overlooked in the rush to implement infrastructure measures. Space reallocation measures should be done also considering the needs of the urban logistics sector and other recommendations that can be found in some documents like the COVID-19 SUMP Practitioner's Guide. I will provide all the links also with the presentation. So when feasible, temporary measures that reallocate space towards walking and cycling should be made permanent. And it's important to highlight here that the higher chances of interventions becoming permanent are in those cities with a good SUMP, where street reallocation projects were accelerated, but were already part of a long-term plan and vision. So these cities that had already a plan have been able to advance much more quickly. For example, in Bologna, the Bicipolitana network fast-tracked already planned bike lanes to allow people to travel safely as lockdown measures were eased in Italy. And the Bicipolitana network will consist of 493 kilometers of cycle lanes integrated across the city. And the project was already set out in the city's sustainable urban mobility plan and has some sections already completed, others are in progress. But something, yes, worth highlighting is that while the original plan was to be completed, to complete this network by 2030, the implementation is being much quicker than that. Also, in Dublin, as part of their COVID-19 mobility program, the city is aiming to triple cycling numbers. And for this reason, they're creating protected, safe, and continuous cycling routes that are accessible to everyone. This is the example, for example, the Griffith Avenue cycle lane, which is currently being finalized, and it provides a 2-meter wide, high-quality protected cycle lane on both sides of a 3.5-kilometer main road. This route has been prioritized under this program due to the fact that a high number of schools and colleges were in the area. So through the provision of safe cycling routes to school and colleges, the city hopes to cultivate a cycling culture among the next generation. But there have been other cities also recently developing cycling plans following a network approach, for example, in Brussels, Rome, London, Milan, Lisbon, and others. In addition to this, since the COVID-19 outbreak, we have also seen a great increase in the sale of bikes and e-bikes. In December 2020, a new forecast for the cycling sector showed that Europeans are expected to buy an extra 10 million bikes per year by 2030. So this is 47% more than the annual number in 2019. And leading the way in the curve are the e-bikes, which are predicted to grow from 3.7 millions in 2019 to 17 millions in 2030. So indeed, e-bikes create a possibility to cycle faster and also on longer distances, and they are an appealing substitute for car trips that might be too distant or unpleasant for a normal bike, for example, because of the topography or other reasons. So they are also making cycling a viable option for new groups of users, for example, old people. Public bike sharing systems should also be expanded and are being expanded in many cities. increasing both the number of bikes available and also the extent of the network. This has been the approach taken by Madrid public operator Bicimat service, and cities are also deploying services such as long-term electric bike rental systems, for example, Bellico location by Ile-de-France, which is the largest in the world. There are also incentives for purchasing bikes, e-bikes or cargo bikes that can nudge people away from cars. And they are also increasing, especially after the pandemic. For example, France, Italy, Portugal, Spain, Germany are providing these rebates to people who decide to buy an e-bike. And also the private sector, e-bike schemes can also be an opportunity. There's potential for establishing new public-private partnerships or subsidies to also take these shared bike schemes into the suburbs, and this way reduce car dependence there and to improve the share of cycling for commuter traffic. And this is also can be also important for small and medium-sized cities. What is important is to make these areas less car dependent. But the distribution of cycling infrastructure and the access to bicycle is uneven in many cities, while in inner core of European cities are usually more suitable for cycling. Enabling cycling between city centers and suburbs and between small and medium-sized cities, which are close to each other, still remains a challenge. Overall, people living in these areas are more prone to depending on their private motorized vehicles. That's why providing cycling as an alternative for cars here could radically reduce congestion in and around cities. What refrains many people from cycling in longer distances is the absence of infrastructure to do it safely. That's why the provision of safe, high quality, efficient, and comfortable infrastructure is instrumental to achieve this goal. Well, this is also the approach followed by the region of Ile-de-France. In order to achieve integrated and useful cycling infrastructure, good connectivity with the network needs to be provided so that people can move from one point to another seamlessly. And as a result of the COVID-19 crisis as well, Ile-de-France presented a very ambitious plan for 650 kilometers of cycle paths across the whole region. And this network replicates the actual network of trains, so as to provide an alternative. Cycle highways are the backbones of a cycle network. They can serve bicycle journeys on longer distances between 5 to 30 kilometers, and they provide high quality functional cycling connections, connecting cities and suburbs, residential areas, and relevant destinations that can be, they should be designed to serve all target groups, so not only focus on commuting trips. So they provide connections with destinations such as schools, universities, and hospitals, in addition to workplaces. And this kind of high quality infrastructure can play an important role in convincing people to leave their cars behind and cycle to their destinations. The CHIPS project, which recently ended, provides extensive information and guidance on the whole cycle, from the planning stage, the design, to its implementation and communication. And it has developed several tools, for example, to identify the potential for cycle highways. Here's an example of a network of cycle highways in the Flemish Brabant province in Flanders. And another example is the cycle superhighway system in North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany. And 7 cycle highways are in planning, under the construction, or already open to traffic. And the 7 projects will together realize a total length of more than 250 kilometers, with a combined investment of 370 million euros. Within them, the route RS1 has already been built along 100 kilometers and is designed for the day-to-day use. It estimates that each day this RS1 removes a daily burden of 52,000 car journeys from the streets of the metropole area of the Ruhr, reducing climate endangering CO2 emissions by 16,600 tons of CO2 emissions per year. So here you can see an image of this RS1 from the picture between Mulham and Essen, as it connects several cities. And it is also formed in a previous railroad track, which is good as these are already planned in a plain surface. The way cycle highways are communicated is also important in order to make sure that they can be easily readable by its users. Here you can see some images from the Netherlands, where they have been recently developing their cycle highway wayfinding standards after a dedicated design and research process. The boom of e-bikes, combined with the ability of high quality cycling infrastructure, can provide a real alternative for private motorized vehicles for longer distance. In this chart, we see in the horizontal axis the speeds of different types of bicycles, and in the vertical axis, the distance traveled, to have an idea of the time spent per journey. If we take the region of Flanders as an example, 78% of all trips are under 15 kilometers. So this kind of infrastructure has a really high potential for use. Another aspect related to infrastructure that needs to be taken into account is the existence of safe bicycle parking, because it's very important to also have a safe place where to park our bicycles if we're going to use them as a means of transport. The Vitoria-Gasteiz set a strategy to respond to the high demand of bicycle parking in key areas, such as the city center, in the university, and also in sports facilities, and also in some residential areas. In here we can see how the usage of these bicycle parking facilities has evolved over time very positively. And in case of commuting travel, other elements can also be considered, for example, showers in the workplaces or lockers. And I will now give a brief overview of some of the software measures that can be considered. This is the result of a survey conducted by the CHIPS project on the motivations to cycle. And according to it, the main reason behind choosing to cycle is to improve health, followed by reducing commuting time, saving money, and helping the environment. And indeed, we are aware that active travel can have a very positive effect on health of citizens. To achieve this modal shift towards cycling, education is very important, working with target groups like kids, who are the cyclists of the future. This approach is being taken by many cities. For example, Vienna has extensive experience on this topic and has developed a wealth of tools to teach children at school. And also, police member European Metropolis of Lille is seeking to engage the city's young people in safe and sustainable mobility issues. And Lille has published a guide for children aged from 6 to 10 years old, aiming to raise awareness of ecomobility and road safety. And the publication follows also the city's substantial enhancements to the accessibility, safety, and sustainability of its urban mobility services. And the metropolitan area has installed also temporary cycle lanes following the COVID-19 lockdown as previous examples. And it has also installed secure bike parking stations and limited vehicle speeds. Also, Sustrans, which is a charity making it easier for people to walk and cycle in England, has developed a wealth of resources, incentive schemes, guides, and events to help schools and professionals working with young people to encourage active sustainable travel, like, for example, the iBike activities. So another very important group, target group, is commuters. Commuting trips frequently represent an important portion of trips in cities and regions, which make employees a group with high potential for change in the short term. And for this reason, it is important to have a good understanding of commuters' needs and mobility behavior, especially regarding vulnerable groups. Indeed, whereas kids are a very important target group for the long term, commuters are a group that can have a very important impact in the very short term. And there are different approaches which are are being implemented to encourage employees to shift towards active travel. For example, the employer approach, which adopted by Sudlenberg-Breitbart, is an example of a program trying to achieve this shift of employees towards active travel. Well, it consists of a broker visiting the different companies and making an analysis of the traveling habits or behaviors within this company, and it provides a series of alternatives, and then the employers commit themselves to offer these alternatives to their employees. Something which is important to make sure is that employers can also understand the benefits of having healthier and more active employees. For example, improving the vitality and health of employees can also reduce possible absenteeism of employees. It can reduce the need for parking space. It can, of course, also reduce the CO2 emissions. And also taking into account the whole disruption caused by COVID in terms of commuting behaviors, when slowly going back to office, employers can have an important role in this by facilitating active options for their employees' commute. And another important target group is the elderly. For example, the Cycle On is a Dutch program to motivate the elderly people to keep riding the bike as long as possible, but in a safe way. The Dutch program Cycle On started in 2018. The goal is to create awareness of specific risks and behavioral change in the elderly cyclist. The National Program Office works together with regional and local partners to reach this target group, and all 12 provinces in the Amsterdam. So all 12 provinces have already joined this initiative, which proves to be very successful. Also, in addition to education, conveying the multiple benefits of walking to a wider audience can make change easier. The example, for example, well, the recently launched communication strategy to promote walking in Brussels, but also we've seen many good examples of communication campaigns during the pandemic to get people to cycle. For example, this one from Bologna, everyone will ride a bike, and many others. And I will finish with some recommendations. For example, the importance of collecting feedback. Citizens need to be encouraged to share any concerns they have and what interventions they believe are required. This was the approach followed by Sostrans in their tool Space to Move app, where they can visualize and they can add to this app the interventions that are taking place, and as well as commenting on them. And there is potential for data-driven decision-making by collecting data to inform policy and find arguments that could help justify as well investments in cycling. Another good example is Ping If You Care, which provides a button to cyclists. And with this button, participants can mark situations which they perceive as unsafe. And by doing so, they create a clear image of the current traffic situation for cyclists. This initiative, for example, is also running in several pilots. With regards to tracking of cycling data, the tracking and analysis tool, which was developed by Trace Project, which already ended, is a valuable resource. It transforms GPA's cycling and walking data to meaningful indicators on the local mobility network. The tool is targeted at mobility planners and decision makers who want to understand better what the cycling and walking demand is and the performance of existing infrastructure. And also the Flow project, which you can see here, created a methodology to assess the effectiveness of walking and cycling measures in addressing urban road congestion. In these slides, you see some of the results of the analysis. For example, 6.47 million journeys made by motorized modes could be cycled in less than 20 minutes. Well, and then many other interesting facts as well. I recommend you to check. In addition to existing guidance, which there's a wealth already of guidance on how to develop cycling infrastructure, safe cycle lanes, and also many of them have been developed during the pandemic, also to tackle the issue of how to develop them also in a quick way, but still guidance needs to be further developed, further enhanced, and also shared and made available so that everyone can have access to this guidance. In addition to carrots or to measures that try to encourage people to cycle, also some sticks are needed. And urban vehicle access regulations can be a useful tool, not just to tackle air pollution, but also to improve livability in cities. The superblocks model, Barcelona has demonstrated the multiple benefits that this model can bring. Now other cities like Vienna and Berlin are also working on adapted versions of this model. The Reveal project is developing a framework to support cities in the process of designing and implementing urban vehicle access regulations in a successful way. Sometimes it's a complex process. As part of this project, the city of Vitoria-Gasteiz is working on the implementation of several superblocks throughout the city. And of course, this has also an impact in encouraging active travel by regulating the is crucial to create more safe, cyclable and walkable environments. Many cities also reduce speed limits during the lockdown to ensure safe walking and cycling. And on January 2021, Brussels introduced a citywide 30 km/h limit, which applies equally to all vehicles and aims to create safer roads and a calmer city for everyone. Other cities implementing citywide 30 km/h limits include Graz, Grenoble, Helsinki, Valencia, Zurich, and many others. So in many cities, or in many of the cities which have quickly implemented measures, a mayor or council member has often been included in or at the forefront of the decision, as well as in its media portrayal. This is the case of Paris, and it shows that strong support for walkability and for cycling, for active travel, and for livable cities can even lead to a re-election, as in their case. So I will very briefly mention some conclusions. So I mentioned infrastructure, the importance of a network approach, of having safe, connected networks, and the potential also of cycle highways for the longer distances. Also the boom of e-bikes and the potential for behavior change for all target groups and especially for commuters. So to wrap up, I'd like to say that all the ingredients are there to enable cycling trips in, around, and in between cities, and that this is very important to fully harness the benefits that cycling can bring for cities and for citizens. So thank you very much.